Hello everybody, welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet. And today we have a senryu from the latest issue of Failed Haiku, a poem from Seánan Forbes called Halves and Thirds. Halves and Thirds. Alright, so it's time. Grab yourself a tasty beverage, sit back, and let's senryu. Welcome back, everybody. Yes, I'm taking another sip here because it is hot in St. Louis. We have a major heat wave underway here. Temperatures well into the 100s, and it is hot, hot, hot. So nothing like a nice cold beverage to help with the heat. And today we have a wonderful poem by Seánan Forbes from Failed Haiku. And Failed Haiku is a journal for senryu, hence the funny title. I think I gave the origin story of that title in a previous episode, but I'll tell it again because it's pretty funny. The founder of Failed Haiku, Mike Reiling, up from northern Michigan, always had a saying that whenever he was writing a haiku and it didn't work, when his haiku would fail, he would try to turn it into a senryu. And so we thought it would be funny to have a journal named Failed Haiku that would focus on senryu and other related forms too, but primarily senryu. So that's where the name comes from. And this piece is kind of a serious one, as opposed to a funny one, despite the name of the journal. And it does follow the fragment and phrase format. In this case, the phrase comes first and the fragment comes second. And the poem goes like this. Halves and thirds of other people's kitchens. Missile strike. Halves and thirds of other people's kitchens. Missile strike. This one is as poignant as ever, as we do have images of war on our TV screens. And this is a poem about viewing, about, in my sense, about being distant from what's going on in the world. And we get these images that are broadcast to us on all of the different screens that we pay attention to. And it really struck out at me in this issue as one that I needed to take note of and remember. Let's kind of break it down on how it works line by line, and we'll talk a little bit more about what it is or how it moves me in that process. Now, the first line, halves and thirds, is very interesting as a line because it's obviously incomplete, and it doesn't really let you know at all what the poem is going to be about. It's a very interesting first line. I mean, halves and thirds. I can honestly say out of the thousands of haiku I've ever read, I've never read a first line that worked like that. And so I was interested from the start because I had no clue where it was going. It doesn't put me in any sort of location. It doesn't address any sort of specific scene. It doesn't give me anything to go on except for it's just an interesting line. You know, I'm intrigued by the fact that it's unique and I want to move forward. Plus, I just want to know what the halves and thirds are. You know, what are we talking, pizza? Are we talking, you know, what is it that we're talking about here? I need to know. And so you continue on to line 2. And line 2 is of other people's kitchens. Of other people's kitchens. All right. Interesting, even more. I don't think of people's kitchens in that way. How do you think of halves and thirds of other people's kitchens? Where do you see that? Where do you experience that? How does that, where are you where you take note of something like that? So this builds in a very interesting way for me, with a very unique first line, even more so a more puzzling second line. It's even got the dash in there, which makes me, which adds an extra bit of urgency, I would say, to that line, which is an interesting point, because after line 1 and 2, I want to pause. I want to figure out where I am, what I'm looking at, but that dash, for me is a movement. It's pulling me down. And then you get to that third line of missile strike. Missile strike. Aha. This suddenly makes sense. This is suddenly something I've seen before. This is suddenly something I've seen probably more times than I would have wished by watching news of war, news of conflict, news of destruction. I just exhale. I'm just, my heart aches for this piece, because the viewer of this poem, who's got the eyes looking out into the world, is not directly impacted by this, in the sense that it's not their kitchen. You're looking at other people's kitchens. And the fact that you're looking at other people's kitchens means to me that I'm at a safe distance. I'm observing this, and the missile strike has already happened. I'm looking at the result of that missile strike. At this point, the attack is over. The strike on the city is over. The explosions have happened. The rubble has settled. The smoke may still be smoldering, but we're left to be able to go in with a camera or with something and view what has just taken place. And the fact that we, in our safety, are viewing other people's halves and thirds of kitchens. That's when halves and thirds really, really becomes a striking line. Because you have halves and then you have thirds. So, that just increases the level of the destruction that you're seeing, of a building completely ripped apart. Multiple halves. So this is, to me, an apartment building of some sort, a civilian building that's been shredded by a missile strike, which is heart-wrenching that a civilian target would have happened. It could have been an air, depending on who is in charge and depending on what the military is saying about what has happened. It could have been a strategic attack, could have been whatever, could have been they thought that the leader of some terrorist organization was embedded in that building, and they got the call, they made the strike, and here's the aftermath, and you're seeing what happened afterwards, But this poem doesn't take sides. It doesn't talk about the why. It doesn't talk about who's targeting who. It doesn't talk about, what intentions are that led to the strike. It's simply showing the human aftermath of that strike. And when you get to the fact that it's kitchens that we're seeing, the sides of buildings ripped off and we can see inside these private areas, we see kitchens. That's a gathering place. That's a place where, meals are cooked. That's a place where people sit around tables. That's so much happens in a kitchen, in and around a kitchen, that it's it's a hard poem, And I thank Seánan Forbes for going through the great effort and care to get this poem just right, and for balancing it and making the editing decisions to align it in such a way so that we see things first, we see the aftermath first, and then we get the context of what happened. Because this could have been a tornado, it could have been some sort of natural disaster, could have been anything that would have exposed this. It could have been, just a demolition of an old building. I've definitely seen that in my own city where they're tearing down buildings and you can still see, a shower curtain or something flying in the wind because nobody, it wasn't fully gutted before they decided to tear down the building. So this went to great pains to set up the scene, build the scene with curiosity with that first line. Making it intimate with a second line, but still being puzzled as to what it is you're looking at, how it is you're coming to view this, and then really using that precision third line of missile strike to tie it all home and to tie it all together. And this is one of these poems that feels like to me something that couldn't have happened in an earlier time. And what do I mean by that? I think when we're writing poems, when you're first learning this stuff anyway, you might have a tendency to want to try to write like Basho or Busan or Issa, write like the old masters, and sort of try to emulate that, which is good, and that's part of the learning process. But what you have to do is always to make sure that your poems could have only been written now. You know what I mean? I mean, they could reflect upon the masters. They could have been written at any time, but you want them to be alive today. And hopefully alive, they'll live on like the masters' poems have lived on because they captured a human element or they captured a part of nature in such a way that was just, that does resonate and continues to resonate. But there's something about a poem that's written in today's world that likely will carry on. And this one, I think, will easily stand the test of time. But what I mean by it's a poem of now is because we have these images of war now. We can see them. We can see it in real time. We can see drone strikes. We sometimes see footage of the guided missile hitting its target on the news. And 15, 20, 30 years ago, that would have been classified information if it existed. But it just wouldn't have been something that's as commonplace these days that you can see and watch, and it gets in the newsreels, and it's on that 24-hour, 24/7 news cycle where you just see it again and again and again and again and again because it's the moment, it's the big image of the day of the conflict of the moment. And this does a really good job of pulling you into the image and then learning the context. And sometimes that's what happens when you're flipping through the channels on the news, or you just catch the image before you get the context of what it is you're looking at. If you're scrolling through your Facebook feed or your TikTok or whatever, you might watch something before you really realize what it is you're looking at. And to me, this fits into that contemporary moment of our screens and news and reels and all of that stuff that's happening so often. And what it also does is it still does a great job of capturing the element of the human element. It's not a poem that's numb to the moment. It's not a poem that's callous. It's a poem that says, hey, look at this. This is horrible. This is horrific. And it's important to see. And it's important to see because if you go on and live our lives and are in moments where you have the ability to use your voice to make a difference, to make a change, to make a decision on the course of events and future events, be it deciding to run for office, be it raising a petition, be it, putting your vote in the ballot box, whatever it is, having conversations with people. We often think that our little sphere of influence doesn't matter, that we don't have a way to reach out and touch people. But our everyday actions and decisions and attitudes and what we choose to talk about and not talk about have much bigger ripple effect around us than we think. Because we do interact with people, our moods and tones does rub off on people and can influence, how things shake down. And so this is an important poem, a very nice senryu that does remind us of the horrible way that humans treat each other sometimes. And unfortunately, that's going on today, and it's true as it. I mean, that's a truth that's been with us as long as we've been human. I mean, that's nothing new. But the ability to see it and the ability to have a missile strike that can do this kind of damage, and the missile comes from far away. It's not right there. You're not seeing the person eye to eye when you're making these decisions to make these launches. It's of our, it's the way the world is right now. And haiku and senryu can do a great job of capturing and reflecting that, as this poem does. So again, this one from Seánan Forbes comes from Failed Haiku, the current issue, which is issue 78. Do check out the site. They always have, they are published every month, and accept work from a wide variety of beginning to very established poets. And they usually have, it's not uncommon for them to have themed issues. So do check it out, read the submission guidelines, see what the issue is calling for that month or that next month, and give your work a shout, give it a chance, submit. And that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, leave a comment if you have some thoughts or if this moved you in any certain way. I'd like to see it, and other people that might watch this, stumble upon it, might see it as well. Again, it's another way of how we influence the world, and how eyes, you never know what can happen by putting yourself out there. And subscribe to the channel if you like. It helps me show up in algorithms when people do searches for stuff. So much appreciated if you do that. And ring the bell to get notifications on when new episodes arise, like this one, episode 32. So thanks again. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in and making time in your life for this little poetry channel, this little poetry episode. I hope it brought you something to think about. It was kind of a serious subject, but, it's also nice to have serious talk from time to time, too. So thanks much. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.